Welcome all. I'm Faith. I'm your librarian from Woodson Regional Library. And on behalf of the Chicago Public Library, welcome to Speak on It, a conversation connecting teens with successful authors. And today, I'm so excited to say that we have Nikki Grimes, author extraordinaire. She was born in Harlem, started writing at the age of 6, gave her first poetry reading at 13 at a library, actually, County Cullen Library.
Yes.
Yeah. As a teenager, she began publishing her poetry. She was mentored by James Baldwin, so cool. She attended Rutgers University, where she earned her BA in English and African languages. And she studied with Nikki Giovanni, and she's the author of numerous award-winning books for children and young adults, including Garvey's Choice from 2016, Barack Obama, Son of Promise, Child of Hope from 2008, which was a New York Times bestseller and an NAACP Image Award winner. She has received many other honors, including the 2003 Coretta Scott King Award, the 2006 National Council of Teachers of English Award for Excellence in Poetry for Children, the 2016 Virginia Hamilton Literary Award, and the 2017 Wilder Medal Award, also now known as the Children's Literature Legacy Award. Wow. Wow, you're so prolific. How are you doing today, Nikki?
I'm okay. Mostly just trying to stay cool out here.
Oh yeah, it is getting
Triple
warm.
digits out in California, so.
Oh wow, yeah, that's right. You are in California now. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference from New York, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you started writing at the age of 6. Can you tell me more about that? What made you pick up a pen and start writing?
I had things I needed to get off my chest and didn't feel I had people around me who I could trust, who I could talk to.
Mm.
And it was all about survival. Reading and writing became my survival tools early on. And so it was really just about getting these things that were pressing in on me out in some way. And it's a good thing I discovered that, because it was a lot, less radical and less troublesome than, say, something you might do that end up in the principal's office. It was okay to be angry on the page and to scream and holler on the page.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt anybody, and it helped me. And so I was hooked early on for that reason.
So you used it as an avenue of expression, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. So I noticed that that's a common theme in a lot of your books. One particular book, Bronx, Masquerade, it won so many awards. I actually use this book very regularly to conduct book groups with teens, and it would open up very important conversations about life and self-expression. What impact did you imagine this book or any of your books having on youth?
Well, you never really know. I mean, you have your own intention when you put the work out, and have a sense of its possibility. Not necessarily its importance so much, but its possibility. I wanted to create a work that would open conversations, that would allow teachers, librarians, parents to have entry points for conversations with teens, as well as giving teens representations of themselves so that they would understand that they are not alone. For me, the most powerful thing about story is that it does that, is that you come to it thinking that whatever you're experiencing, only you experience that and feeling that or wrestling with that. And then there's the miracle of coming and seeing someone who's having that same experience, and you get to see them come out on the other side. And so that leaves you with hope for your own situation. For me, that's the biggest magic about a story and the possibility of a story. That has had so many reverberations, and that is not only has impacted the readers themselves, but teachers. I've gotten so many letters from teachers who said, one teacher who says flat out that book saved his career. He was ready to quit teaching until he read that book and began to get a sense of what was possible in his classroom. And it really just turned him around. He's a really dynamic teacher and consultant and educator and stuff. So never saw that coming, And I've heard from other teachers as well who've had the impact. I think that the most impactful thing I've ever heard from any of them is, and I've heard the specific language, they said that book had changed the culture of their classroom.
Wow.
Could not ask for anything more powerful than that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I agree that the book is very powerful. With that in mind, how do you plan your stories? Like, how do you do ideas just come to you, or? I'm sort of two camps of writers in a really general, broad sense, and that's character-driven and plot-driven, and I'm character-driven. Oh, wow.
So I don't always know the story. I get to know the character. I develop the character, and then the character to speak to me about who he or she, what issues wrestling with, and what they need answers to, or what they need to explore. And so the story often grows out of the character.
Mm.
I may have like a general sense, a really genetic sense. I mean, with Bronx Masquerade, I knew that I wanted to explore a classroom of high school students over the course of a year.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see the difference between who they really were on the inside and how they expressed themselves to the world. And I wanted to juxtapose that using poetry and prose. But I hadn't worked out what the individual stories would be.
Okay.
I just had that sort of basic framework. And then as I created the characters, they start to tell me what their stories would be.
Mm. So did the poems come out of the characters, or?
Yeah, okay. That was the single most challenging aspect of that book and of the sequel, Between the Lines, is figuring out how to write poetry in the voices of the characters and have it not be my voice as a poet.
Yeah.
That was really a challenge. Yeah. The poems came from them.
That's amazing. And speaking of In Between the Lines, right? Another one of my favorite books. You left the author's note talking about how one of the characters, Genesis, was actually inspired by your own experience in foster care. Are there other characters in your books that like inspired by real life experiences?
Oh, sure, but I'm not going to tell you which ones.
Okay, fair enough.
It's sort of bits of me in everything that I write, and sometimes it isn't so much the particular story as the emotional experience, because it's important that a story be emotionally true, even if the details are completely different. But it's the emotional truth that matters.
Mm.
So, yeah.
I love that. The emotional truth that matters. I really love that. You were also kind of quoted saying, "I'm happy to own the title poet," when somebody had referred to you as a storyteller. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what's the difference between being a storyteller and a poet for you, or are they one and the same?
Well, at this point, they're one and the same for me. Right. Poetry is my first language. It's my default. I always go there. I do occasionally write prose, but it's almost under protest. Now, the protest might be with my muse because it was her idea. But, I'm like, but poetry is going to be what I go to first. And I love it for so many reasons. I love the music of the language is really important to me. But even more importantly, because there's so much of image and metaphor in poetry, it allows you to talk about any subject and do it in a way that if something is horrific, you can soften it. If something is indelicate or graphic, you can make it delicate, give it a delicate treatment. So no matter what the subject is, it's possible to write about it in a way that the reader can take in and not be overwhelmed by, and not find too heavy. And of course, it's important to create breathing room for the author. And that's what I use comedy for. So you'll have pieces that are very heavy followed by something comic. And you need the comic, those comic moments that allow you to take a deep breath after you've had this really intense, dramatic experience, a really, hard experience. And you need something to kind of lighten the moment, give you that room to breathe, and then you can kind of go on and tell the rest of the story. So
yeah, it's a good balance. It's a good balance to have. So speaking of that, you talk about like lightening the moments. I also noticed on your webpage that you do a lot of visual art as well.
Yeah.
So how is that different for you? Like, did you just start doing that, or was that something you've always been into?
Well, I didn't always do. Well, I've always done. I've always done like craft and fiber art and those kinds of things. I didn't get into visual art itself until it's been a while. Maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Okay. I took a class, and the reason I took it wasn't because I thought I could learn art, because at that point I felt, I'd be doing good to draw a stick figure, and I thought, I couldn't draw a straight line if my, work depended on it. But I had started 10 years ago about the importance of keeping my mind sharp, of keeping myself healthy, my brain healthy, and the whole idea of developing new grooves in the brain. And the best way to do that, because I was starting to think about Alzheimer's, and what do you do to fend off, any kind of mental deterioration. And learning is a great way to approach that. So think about learning something new, something that will challenge you, something that will cause you to use parts of your brain you don't ordinarily use, that sort of thing. And so I thought, art would be perfect. I know nothing about that. So I signed up for drawing classes, and then it went into more advanced drawing classes, and then I did dry mediums and then wet mediums, and settled in on watercolor. And meantime, I've been doing collage for years, doing card making and book making and things of that nature. Excuse me. And then I started thinking there should be some way to marry these things. And one of the galleries I was involved with had a demo one evening of a watercolor artist who does collage. I was like, I'm down for that. So I went to that and I saw it done. I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely for me. So then I started doing, that kind of work. I don't do it as much as I would like. I'm hoping to get more back into it, but I still do card making, book making, that kind of thing. And some watercolor, some drawing. I have one right here. Do this without making too much of a mess.
Oh, we get to see some art. Cool. Is that it? That is so beautiful.
That's one of them. So
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I love the colors.
So yeah, so have fun.
That's awesome. Did you have any say so in the artwork that was chosen for the book that you the book that you just most recently released with Kamala Harris?
I'm always involved in that, in the choice of artist.
Okay.
Yeah. The most fun I had with that, though, was with the follow-up to One Last Word, which is anthology really, but it's called Legacy, Women Poets of the Harlem Renaissance, which comes out in January.
Oh, awesome.
And so I needed artists for that. And this book, it's only women artists, only women poets, written by a woman. And I wanted all women artists. And so it has some of the most phenomenal Black women artists working today, from Vanessa Brantley Newton, Pat Cummings, Laura Freeman, Equa Holmes, who did both the cover and something inside, Shadra Strickland, Elizabeth Zunian, and some others thrown in. So, and that was my wish list. I went to my editor with my wish list. These are the women I want for this book. And I got almost everybody I wanted. There were a couple who I guess were busy or whatever, but I mostly got who I wanted, and absolutely thrilled. It's gorgeous. Gorgeous.
I look forward to reading it soon. We actually have a question from one of our viewers. So Byron C says, would you say that survival through reading and writing is a writer's trait, or can anyone, not just writers, benefit from it?
No, I think anybody can benefit from it. And while it was a survival tool for me, doesn't mean that that's what it was for every writer. People, create art for all kinds of reasons. But that was how it started out for me. It became more than that later on. But initially, I wasn't thinking in terms of career. It was just how I got through the day. It was how I coped, And then when I hit my mid-teens, I started thinking in terms of, I might actually want to do this, and figuring out what that would look like, and started thinking about, getting published in literary journals and that kind of thing. That happened in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is it true that you had some experience with James Baldwin, that you were mentored by him?
He was my first mentor. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. What was that like?
I loved his work. I had a really great teacher she was my teacher and my guidance counselor one year, who wanted to make sure I knew his work. And there were a couple of authors that she wanted to make sure I knew. So she would surreptitiously stick books into my backpack when I wasn't looking. And I would go home and I would find like buried treasure, these books that she had slipped in there. And one day the book she slipped in there was, by James Baldwin. And I read his work and I was like, who is this person? I have to know this person. And I just, those books became very dog-eared. I carried them everywhere, read them over and over again. And then when I was 17, he was in the States doing a talk at, I think it was the second memorial for Malcolm X, and he was doing a talk at this event, and it was at a local school. I don't know if it was high school, but a local school in Harlem that I could get to. And so I went and I sat in the front row so I could, listen to him. And as soon as he left the podium, he also left the hall. And so I ran after him. because I was 17 and, I don't think anything like that. So I'm after it, and I have my little notebook of poetry. I didn't go anywhere without it. And I run it all after him. Mr. Baldwin, can I see you for a minute? Mr. Baldwin, and I get there and he stops and I'm like, out of breath. And he waits for me to, kind of gather myself. And I explain to him that I'm a writer too. And I'd love for him to could he read my poetry and tell me what he thinks? And he stood right there in the school hall. And he read that notebook cover to cover. And then he turned to the back and he wrote his name, his address, and his phone number. And he gave it back to me and said, "You call me."
Wow.
And because I was 17, I did. Now, if I had been older, first of all, I wouldn't have run after him, because I would have thought, "Oh, you can't do that. That's who, this is a famous author. And, you just don't do." No, I was 17. What did I know? So, yeah, I called. Hung out with him at the house, and he would talk to me, it was really an informal kind of thing, but he would talk to me about the importance of honoring your gift, of writing, doing work that was honorable, that you believed in, that you were truthful about, and the importance of not compromising your gift for any reason. Things like that. But there were things that stayed with me. And obviously the importance of mastering your tools. And in this case, it's the language. It's language that you need to be a master of it. If you're going to wield your language and to master it. Yeah. See, he was in the States for a year and a half before he went back to France. And then he didn't come back after that. And so for that year and a half, I had him all to myself. Not exactly. He was doing a lot of other things. But for the year and a half that he was in the States, I just was like a fixture around his house. Met his brothers and sisters and, all his family, nieces, nephews, that kind of thing. Just in and out, just kind of hanging out and picking up on the aura, whatever. Yeah.
That is an amazing story.
Yeah.
Like, that is so cool.
I kind of wish I was more in the mindset that I am now. I mean, if it happened now, I would have been taking pictures and audios, and I wasn't thinking about any of that. I just was with him in the moment, taking.
And I think that's okay. I think that's okay. That is okay, because it all shows in the work that you do, right? Like you absorbed his words, and you look at you, like you're absolutely amazing. I'm one of your biggest fans, and so speaking of like your gifts and harboring on your craft, do you so in Dark Sons, in the interview for Dark Sons, you mentioned that you did like a lot of research to develop the character of Ishmael. And I was wondering, like, do you do that type of research for all of your books, or like what?
Oh, no, that was historical. Whenever you're dealing with historical material or biographical material, that's when you need really. There are some times in places where research is called for. You're not always aware of it going in. I had to stop and do research my own memoir for things that I hadn't thought about. Like when I started weaving in new headlines, I'd have to go back and research when a certain headline happened exactly to see if in fact it fit and what headlines would fit. Right. Or either then I would have to move the time of that particular chapter to coincide with that headline, because the headline was like the main, inspiration for that particular piece. I had to do the same thing with music. When I wove in the music, I'd have to go back and look at, what the songs were of that particular decade or that particular year, or when a particular song was released. So how likely would it be that the song that I had in mind, because we all have a soundtrack in our heads of our life, right? If that song really worked, or if it just somehow morphed in my mind as the song that would work. So I'd have to research that to figure that out.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the James Baldwin really quickly. I'm sorry. We have another viewer who asked, has a teen writer ever chased you the same way you chased James?
Not just teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got some adults that have that ran after you, asked you to read their work?
Yes, I have. Okay. Yeah, the work goes around.
Do you ever think that, or have you ever taken on the role of mentor for somebody?
Yeah, I've mentored a few people. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. I have a couple last questions before we wrap up. So what book are you most proud of, and why?
Ordinary Hazards, because it was the single most difficult thing I've ever written in my life.
Wow.
And I worked on it off and on for 39 years before I got it done.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to go places in myself that were just really difficult. And also, I was battling memory gaps. We all have them, but if you have trauma in your background, those tend to be exaggerated. There are just these places that are complete blanks, where I'll remember certain things that happened in a given period, but I won't remember the name of the school that I went to or the friends that I had at that particular school. I know there were some, but it's just a complete blank. So trying to figure out how to navigate those spaces that were blank, and as well as how to navigate the ones that were really clear, but that were difficult.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You've said a lot of powerful things today. So I did a little bit of digging online and I found a web page that lists like 10 random facts about you, right? And one of the facts said that your life path number was the number 9, which stands for the humanitarian. And it says that the people with the number 9 would gift the world with wisdom and incredible kindness. And they allow their own divine light to shine, and they want to change the world. Their energy is that of the greater good. So I just wanted to ask you, do you feel like you've walked your life's path?
Well, I try to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I never saw that before.
Yeah, it was an interesting web page. It was a lot of random facts that I didn't even think to look up for an author, but I appreciated that because I feel like your work does kind of reflect a lot of what that number says about you, especially in like writing books like the one about Kamala Harris and Barack Obama, and in writing books about like poetry and self-expression. And then giving those resources to youth in terms of finding ways to express themselves and finding avenues that will save their lives, like the writing has done for you. And so I guess my last question for you for today would be, and you've probably heard this a million times, for young Black women authors, right? In today's climate, particularly, what words of wisdom or advice would you offer them?
Ooh. I mean, the two things I say to anyone who wants to write is to read, and to write. And read across genres, not just the one you're interested in, because every single genre has something to teach you. And by doing that, you will strengthen your craft. You give yourself more possibilities. And you also open yourself up to avenues that you wouldn't have considered otherwise. So that's one thing. And your writing is always going to reflect the quality and extent of your reading. So it's really important to do that and to keep that in mind. And then to write, because writing is a muscle and it has to be exercised. There are no shortcuts. There's no way to just jump to the good stuff. You know, you've heard people talk about, I won't use the word, but the awful first draft. And that is, the first draft is always awful. You know, there's no way to get to that great final draft without doing that first one that's not so wonderful, and then all the revisions in between. And so sort of just understand that and dive in. But this is a particularly, and who knows how long it's going to last, but right now where Black voices are being raised and amplified, if you're going to break into this market, this is probably one of the best times to try to do it. But look and see what work is already out there. Do your homework. It's a very competitive business. So you want to make sure you're not promoting something or advancing an idea that's already been done, or that you have a new angle on that old idea, something that's different that you can offer. I would also say to remember the importance of joy. We go to the dark place easily, but there aren't enough books for our kids that exemplify Black joy for both boys and girls. And that's so important, so that they have a rounded, full image of who they are. And we certainly have in our private lives, in our family lives, with our friends, you know, all those sorts of things, all these moments of joy. And our work needs to reflect that.
Wow. Yeah. I agree. And it was a joy having you here today. I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us here at Chicago Public Library. We are like so grateful. I am so grateful.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So next week, for my viewers, we will be interviewing Erica Sanchez, author of I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, just in time for National Hispanic Heritage Month. It'll be from mid-September to October. So same time, right here at 4 p.m., where you saw Nikki Grimes. And we look forward to all of you joining us here again. See you soon. Bye.